Alexander Karnes Off the Rails Part 3. I show Alex a really well made brass traction engine where many of the parts are soft soldered, including the entire boiler and valve gear. He also talks about various qualities of boiler material. This is just one of Alex Karnes' collection of photographs, which makes me laugh. Hello again, Alex. What do you think to the soft soldered small traction engine? Everything is soft soldered, including the boiler.
Well, it was interesting. At first glance I was slightly put off by her, but having examined her and now seen her run, the builder of this thing obviously understood a steam engine holistically. So all the fits and everything are very good. So for instance, I can steer her without the chains binding up or the gear teeth binding up. It propels itself very well, albeit being geared the slowest I've ever seen a traction engine. Is slower geared than a BB1. And the timing is astoundingly perfect. Like it self-starts in just about every position, and it runs smooth and fast, and everything is very nice and neat. There's no kind of hodgepodge. There's no bad fit and finish. Look at how fine the fits are between different pieces. These lines that match perfectly in the plates, the screws and stuff. So whoever did this really knew what they were doing. And you say you steamed it.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll steam anything.
Including broccoli.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mostly then. But no, it's an interesting subject about soft solder. So, of course I don't agree with it, but I have seen amazing things done with it. Now, like the things I critique the builder for is the fact that you'll have to show a photo of it up close. He soldered the eccentric rods to the eccentric straps instead of making it with screws or whatever.
And this word, solder, it has an L in it, doesn't it?
Yes.
In American it's silent.
Yes.
Because we pronounce the L because we're a civilized
Solder,
nation.
yes.
Solder, dear boy.
Yes.
But yeah, soldering or whatever. It was kindly sent to me by a viewer, and he bought it, I believe, off the auction site that we all know and love. And it was partially dismantled and it didn't run and there were things wrong with it. And I took one look at it, and for a while I put it in a box and I thought, oh, I don't think I can be bothered with this. And then one day I thought, no, come on, persevere. The only real problem I had with it was with the check valve, which was a pain.
Well, if she hasn't run in a long time and the checks haven't been wetted, they'll jam.
I changed the check valve. That's an old Stewart type, and I recut the ball seat. And now when you run it and you open the bypass valve, because at the other side that you can't see,
it pumps nice and strong.
It pumps beautifully.
Yeah, it's interesting that, I mean, like I say, that the way he built it, like, okay, the sight glass is not in the way of the fire door, and the sight glass reads the real water level because there's a minimum of small diameter piping between it and the boiler and all the rest. Very nice machine, actually. And if we had like a gymnasium or a road with a nice smooth finish, we could really have a little trip on this thing. Even though it's got the slowest, the speeds on this thing are slow and slower. That's the two. But when it comes to the silver solder, I don't agree with it in things like the valve gear, but when it comes to the boiler, I have seen wonders worked. Copper boilers are one of my favorite things ever. Boilers are one of my favorite things ever, but copper boilers of the model engineers are just incredible because there's a lot of things people don't understand, like there's a lot of cross-blending, where people think, oh, the copper boiler's for a little model, a toy, and then the big stuff is all steel, and of course it isn't. Like you have the mainline locomotives with the copper fireboxes, the arsenic bearing with a super high tensile strength, and then you have weird things like, well, not weird, but weird to other people, like Li-Fu boilers, Li for liquid and Fu for fuel, liquid fuel, where these were built for launches like 20, 30 feet long, and the boiler consisted of two bronze drums, this diameter, with copper water tubes that screwed onto the drums by union. So if you needed to do any work to this boiler, you just take a wrench, unscrew everything, the boiler comes apart like an erector set, you put it back together. No ferrous metal in their construction. Yeah, well, there's millions of different types. So the type you're thinking of, if the tubes go in a heart shape, that's a Thornycroft. There were Harrishoff boilers where the tubes that left the drums were radial to the shell. There were Almy boilers where the whole thing was screwed together out of small pipe unions that did 180 degree and 90 degree bends, and they met the drums at unions where four things went into one union. It was really, there are hundreds and hundreds of types. Mosher and Bolsover and all these different boilers. And a lot of them were partially or entirely copper or bronze or sometimes brass. Is really incredible. But with the models, I've seen where the proper way to build a copper boiler is the way you build a real boiler, which you hold it together structurally with rivets and threads like on the stays, and the solder is only the seal. So I've seen these boilers 120, 150 psi at large sizes, but from a long time ago, where they're riveted together, the pressure vessels, threaded stays, nutted and everything, but the seal is soft solder. But because all it has to do is seal, it's not under any great strain, and so the boiler can be run at high pressures. And then there are copper boilers I've seen where there is no solder, where they're built like a real boiler, and the steam seal is made with caulking. And I don't mean the goop, I mean the small iron that you impact the seam and mush the metal pieces one into another, and of course you rivet over the stay heads. You drive the rivets like you should, I've seen copper boilers that are like that.
Talking about the principle of using a caulking hammer,
Yeah.
that Titch locomotive that I used to have, a good friend of mine who was a professional model engineer built the boiler, and I went to see him on the day that he hydraulic tested it, and there were a couple of little weeps, and I went, it's leaking. I said, and he went,
Bink!
Yeah, literally, pink.
Yes.
So I tried it once, and the more I hit the pipe, the worse it got. In fact, I have a sweet pea boiler to repair, and I'm a little bit worried about that because it's in the firebox. I bought a small oxypropane set, as I showed you the other day, which is a bit of a toy, but should just provide enough localised heat once I do it from the outside. But the secret is, as far as I can see, plenty of flux everywhere. But with this thing, it's worth remembering that Mammods are all brass boilers.
Yes.
And they seem to go on forever.
There was a lot more than that. So in the old locomotives, like if you go to the Science Museum and you look at that cutaway model of the London and Southwestern X2, where it's one of those Express 440s, and you'll see she was built by apprentices. The shell is iron or steel. The firebox is copper. The tubes are all brass. They're an alloy called Kyra. It's a very, very strong brass with very little zinc in it. I don't know the exact recipe. If someone out there does, please educate me on it. For a long time, the locomotives in Britain, a lot of them used brass flue pipes, and fine, they were fine, because there's this misconception out there that brass, it's unacceptable for use in steam and even fittings because it dezinkifies and disintegrates, and that's nonsense. Only poor quality brass does that.
Let me jump in there.
Yeah.
I really need to jump in there. This dezinkifying thing, I've seen it in action.
Yes.
It requires two things, dissimilar metals and water.
Well, it also requires the brass to be of incredibly bad quality.
Really?
Because it has to be what we call, first of all, yellow brass, which is really high in zinc content compared to the other metals in it. And also, that isn't the only thing. It needs to be like 4th or 5th smelt. So we're talking like garbage that has been through an Asian electric arc furnace like 3 times, as like first piece of something, then a piece, so maybe it was a steam fitting the first time it was smelted, and then the second time maybe it was a piece in an automobile, and then maybe it was a piece in a toaster oven, and then it found its way into a model.
What do you think to the quality of those fittings?
Well,
hold it up to the camera.
There's not much I can really see, but I'm like this one here, the way it's kind of foggy looking and very porous, and the way it's kind of almost like a neon yellow, I'd say that's
a modern one.
Yeah, it's terrible. But when you look at, you'll see how it is in how they polish. Some of them, I've seen brass fittings on full-size boilers like washout plugs where you screw them in and the water comes out and you think, oh, it's leaking, I have to tighten it more. So of course you steam down the boiler, you tighten it, you seal it in with something. It doesn't stop because the water is going through the metal because it's porous, because it's so bad. Now there's no quality control.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at this, if I can hold it up to the camera, this is a Stuart 501 boiler.
Which are nice little units.
Yeah, they are, very, very much. There's 2 of these to do and one 504 for 3 steam plants. And I think the actual Stuart fittings, the old Stuart fittings, are a different colour brass to the others.
They will be, and they might be closer to bronze.
But
like
having said that,
yeah.
one of the fittings, the one that I replaced with that,
yeah.
the check valve, had really corroded away.
I wouldn't blame the fact that it's brass. I would blame the fact that it is poor brass and the fact that metals today are much poorer quality. Because, like, if you want to find good arsenic-bearing copper to make a copper firebox in a locomotive or traction engine, you're going to, first of all, it's hard to find. Second of all, if you find it, you will pay. You will pay dearly. And in some cases, it's really stupid, too, because the funny story is, my friends in Switzerland, they told me a story where, I can't remember the metal actually, it was something different than arsenic, but they were these people at the shop in Utzwil, absolute masters. They do all the boiler work for the Furka Oberautbahn, which is a meter gauge rack adhesion railway over the Furka Pass. And they build new copper fireboxes and sometimes brand new boilers, but the right way, the old-fashioned way for these engines that they have, and they all have copper fireboxes. And they were going to make one out of another alloy of copper, high tensile strength, and it had some metal in it that was considered toxic. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But because of this, they refused to ship the material to them because of the toxicity. So then they found and went with arsenic-bearing copper instead, which is the old-fashioned Swindon stuff. And I said, well, that's funny. You probably didn't tell them there was arsenic in it this time, did you? And they go, no, we didn't. But this was probably fortuitous because arsenic-bearing copper is stronger than the other thing they were going to use. I can't remember what the metal was. I wish I could because people need to know. But there's a lot of misconceptions with boilers because, of course, when you talk about dissimilar metals, all the mainline engines of Britain and Europe, the good ones, had iron or steel boiler shells and a copper firebox, and usually copper stays, copper tubes, or Monel stays, and there was never a problem. There was none of this dielectric stuff going on.
One thing that's always puzzled me is the fact that they used copper fireboxes or copper tube plates in steel or cast iron boilers or whatever. And I don't get it, because surely copper expands much more than steel when it's heated, the coefficient of linear expansion. These videos I'm currently making with Alex are not the full-length ones. If you want to see the full-length videos, I recommend joining the AE Karnes Patreon channel. The details are on screen. And that's it for this one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.